Fairfax County is unique, and it had the first hoarding task force in the country, and we have some of the best intermingling of resources available to address hoarding in all its dimensions.
Hello, I'm Fran Guasta-Desangi. Welcome to Mature Living. We all have times when we're busy with work or family concerns and our house can fall into a state of disarray. However, we're usually able to clean it up fairly quickly, but when does ordinary clutter develop into a hoarding situation? Today, I'm joined by Rachael Perrott, Code Compliance Supervisor, and Joan Maguire, Code Compliance Investigator, both with Fairfax County's Office of Code Compliance. They'll share what hoarding is and when and how hoarding can become a safety issue, both for the hoarder and for those in our community. Welcome to you both.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
I'm so glad that you're here. Very important subject, and I want to direct the first question to you, Rachael.
Okay.
Big question to set the table. What is hoarding from the perspective of the Department of Code Compliance? There's a lot to it, but I'll let you take the lead on that.
Sure, I think first off, it's very difficult sometimes for people to understand the difference between clutter and hoarding. Clutter, first of all, is just maybe there's a part of your house or a corner or something that maybe isn't as organized as you like, and that's okay. I think we all have that in our homes. But hoarding is a little bit different. This is an extreme situation where we have so many possessions and so many things in a house that we've now filled up all the free space. And what's happened is we have done this to such a degree that we've taken away the functionality of the space, of the home actually. So what's happened is now I can no longer freely move around the house. I might not be able to get into my bedroom any longer because things are blocking my access. I might not even be able to walk down a hallway or a stairwell. Going in the kitchen, there's no space to store, prepare, or cook food even. I may not even be able to get into my bathroom to use a shower or a working toilet. So hoarding is when so many things have been piled into a house, we can't throw things away, we don't discard, and it just keeps piling up. And now we've created this very dangerous living situation. But hoarding is also about a lot of loss. So it can be the loss of functionality of the space, as I was mentioning. It can be the loss of dignity. Your personal hygiene is very affected if you can't get into the shower or the toilet, that type of thing. It could be the loss of relationships too that are caused by this whole thing, because now you don't want to have people over at your house, or maybe you can't even fit them in your house. So it's the loss of all these types of relationships with friends and family as well. But most importantly, it's about the loss of safety, for sure.
So let's talk about the dangers associated with hoarding. And we talked a little bit about it just now, but if there's more that you can tell us?
Yes, actually there are a lot of dangers associated with hoarding. As Rachael was saying, you know, these people collect stuff, this clutter builds up. So you get to the point where sometimes people are walking over piles of stuff within their home, and then it becomes a tripping hazard.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes it gets to the point where they have so much clutter, it starts piling up. Those piles can then actually cave in on people, and we have seen that where people are underneath those piles of stuff trapped, and unfortunately that can lead to death. So it is a very serious issue.
And I can imagine just the weight of everything, the structure of the house may not be able to handle that, right?
Yes, so you can actually have so much that you are increasing the load of the house itself. The beams and structures are not designed for that type of a load. And that can also add to a fire load. So when you have that much stuff accumulated in your home, and you unfortunately might have a situation where a fire breaks out, all that stuff is actually going to increase the rate of the fire and how fast it burns and the intensity of the fire itself. So then you have so much stuff in your house where it's going to be hard for you to get in and out of your house, and then you add that on top of it.
So the Department of Code Compliance hopefully comes to the rescue.
Yes, we do try. We do
Okay.
try. Absolutely. That's our goal, is to make it safer in people's homes.
So tell me how it is that you operate within the community. I don't know how this falls on your radar when you hear about a hoarding situation.
Sure. We take complaints, so we're complaint-based. So oftentimes we'll have a family member, a neighbor. We can have, maybe it's a landlord even, that could be trying to help his tenant out and not sure how to deal with the situation. Sometimes even it's a first responder that's gone in on a medical emergency and really is having some trouble getting the person out. So it could be that person that also calls it in as well. I will mention, though, you don't have to be correct to make a complaint. If you have a suspicion that something's going on in a house, it's best to call it in. You know, we have plenty of unfounded cases as well.
Has this whole idea of hoarding, has it gotten worse over time, or are we just now more attuned to it because of television shows and podcasts and things of that nature?
So actually, hoarding has been around since the beginning of man. Back in the caveman times, it was advantageous to store extra food and extra clothing and extra materials because that's how your family got through the winter time. But there's also been traumatic events throughout history that have kind of ingrained this thing in our minds about keeping everything, such as the Great Depression. You know, if you didn't keep it, you may not get it again for a very long time. So people learn to just hold on to everything. Even in 2020 with COVID, we all joke and say that was the toilet paper hoarding era, but we did learn how to hoard cleaning supplies and food again. So traumatic events like that can cause it. But actually, it wasn't until the 90s where we had TV shows like Hoarding, Buried Alive, that people went in with a camera crew and got to see everything kind of firsthand and learned about the triggers and the mental health disorder part of it, and even a lot of the dangers associated with it. So while those shows may be a lot for entertainment, they actually really did help educate the public. I think our cases have gone up over time because people are now reporting them because they know they should. But I think, generally speaking, we've always kind of done what we've always done as a population.
So we're talking about things, but people also collect a myriad of things in addition to just stuff. Maybe you could touch ever so briefly on that, and then what can the community do to help you help the people that are dealing with this?
Well, you know, as an investigator, you know, it's my job to go to these people's homes and go in and see. So, you know, we see a lot of the common types of stuff in people's homes, magazines, newspapers. You know, unfortunately, sometimes people have a hard time getting trash, rubbish out of their homes. So that starts collecting inside the home. So that's some more of the common things that we see. Some of the other things that we see sometimes are animal hoarding. You know, it starts out as a good way. You know, someone has, you know, taking in a stray animal, but unfortunately they don't get that pet spayed or neutered. The condition gets really out of control, and before you know it, you have multiple animals around your property and inside your home. We've also seen where people decide to have like sanctuaries, like a rabbit sanctuary where they had hundreds of rabbits inside their basement. And again, they're thinking they're doing something good, but they just don't understand that in actuality, having that many animals is not really good conditions for the animals or for themselves.
This conversation has gone so quickly, and we just have a couple of minutes left. So with that, I want to ask you, how does your work impact the community?
Well, I think it does a lot for the community. Sometimes, unfortunately, these houses can be an eyesore. You know, on the inside, maybe somebody can't see that, but sometimes, unfortunately, they can't get to the repairs. The house falls in disrepair. There's items that, you know, are starting to be stored outside. So, you know, for us, it's important for the community to keep a healthy and happy environment for the whole community, not just that homeowner. So we believe that, you know, for code compliance, it's our job to help that citizen in that home, but it's also to help the community not have that problem, to keep property values up, to keep that community up and be proud of the community that you live in.
If you'd like more information, you're welcome to look at our website. We have a plethora of information on there where you can learn much more than we've had time today to talk about.
Absolutely.
And all of our resources are listed there as well. And if you'd like to make a complaint, you can do it there or call our phone number.
And you could be anonymous if you...
Absolutely. You can definitely be anonymous, or you can go to your board member and have them make the complaint on your behalf as well.
This issue of hoarding, is it something that can be addressed and resolved in a quick amount of time, or does it take a long time because there's so much to it?
That's a really good question. And the problem with hoarding is that it's such a multifaceted issue. Sometimes there's elderly people involved, sometimes children, sometimes animals. Then we have this structure problem. But bottom line is we are dealing with a mental health disorder. So this is definitely not a quick fix, and it's something that takes multi-county agencies to be able to handle. And it can go on for years and sometimes even a lifetime, because hoarding, as I said, is a mental health disorder. So there's a lot of recidivism that can happen, or it just keeps happening and we have to keep addressing it.
Thank you for letting us know that it's a multifaceted issue that takes a long time because of it to resolve. And then do you stay with the people? Is it an ongoing thing that you help?
That's a really good question. We work the case until at which point we've reached compliance with the code violations. We do reach out to partner agencies like Adult Protective Services or Child Protective Services, or even Animal Care Protection Police, to follow up with any other issues that are still left at the house at the end. But we do not have the resources, unfortunately, to follow people throughout time. But that's where we rely a lot on the community to be our eyes and to really understand the parts of hoarding and to know the warning signs when it might be happening again.
Excellent. Thank you. Really appreciate the fact that you came here to share this information.
Thanks so much for having us.
So much.
You are so welcome. Later in the show, we'll learn how the Department of Family Services staff works with individuals and their loved ones who are battling this mental health issue. But first, we'll hear from Dr. Randall Lockwood. He's a member of Fairfax County's Hoarding Committee, and he'll discuss the perspective of hoarding and animals.
I had gotten involved in animal hoarding cases over the last 25 years. I had originally worked with the Humane Society of the United States and then with the ASPCA, and both organizations do investigate animal cruelty cases, and many of the most serious cases we see have involved animal hoarding. By definition, animal hoarding usually involves animals that are being kept in very unhealthy conditions. It's not just a question of the number of animals. There are people who can have a lot of pets that are well cared for. The thing that distinguishes between just someone with too many animals and a true hoarding situation is they are unaware of the harm they're causing. They're in denial. The level of insight in hoarding cases in general is very low, and they will say there's nothing wrong with it, it's just a little dirty, and there are literally dead animals on the floor. We have some different types of hoarders. There is the overwhelmed caregiver, is kind of the simplest level because they're usually aware of what the problem is, or the rescue hoarder who thinks that they're actually performing a service for the animals. They're saving the animals, but the animals are living in a hellish environment. But then we also have the exploiter hoarders who are actually soliciting money, claiming to be caring for the animals that they're not. In animal hoarding cases, usually there is also object hoarding in the majority of cases. Not all hoarders are animal hoarders, but you figure that 2/3 of American households have pets of some kind, so the likelihood that a hoarding case might involve animals can be pretty high. A lot of the problem with hoarding is people cannot detach from their things, and obviously we have much stronger attachments to our companion animals. Cleaning out a hoarder's house can be problematic enough, but removing their animals can be have very serious consequences, which is one of the reasons when we are responding to an animal hoarding cases, we usually do have mental health services involved in that actual process, because it can be very stressful for the hoarder as well as for the animals. One of the aspects of hoarding in general is that it's partly an anxiety disorder. But it also there's financial impact if you don't have the resources to clean up or care for things that can exacerbate the problem. Yes, we've had all the TV shows and so on, but one of the things I've been working on is looking at hoarding cases from the 1800s. And some of the first prosecuted cases by the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals were in the 1860s. And the cases look very similar. You know, often an older woman with too many cats, many of whom are sick or dying. So it's been around, and it's also international. We have hoarding cases from literally all over the world, which also then, I think, suggests that there are some underlying biological aspects. It's not just part of our culture of pet keeping. Responding to a hoarding case requires a task force approach because it's not just an animal problem, a people problem, an adult protective service problem. There are often, in about a quarter of the cases we see, there are dependent people, either children or dependent adults, living in the same household. By raising awareness of animal cruelty in general and its connection to violence against people or the neglect of people has been very important, and we've seen a lot of improvement in that. People are taking how we treat animals much more seriously. Law enforcement looks at it much more seriously, and we recognize in cases, let's say, of serious animal neglect, there is almost always going to be either self-neglect or neglect of someone else in addition to the animals. Making that connection has been, I think, very important.
In our first segment, we talk with Rachael Perrott, Code Compliance Supervisor, and Joan Maguire, Code Compliance Investigator, both with the Department of Code Compliance. They discussed hoarding and the dangers associated with this behavior for both the hoarders and the community. I now welcome Karen Hannigan, Family Safety Supervisor in the Department of Family Services. She'll tell us about the mindset of hoarding and how her agency and other organizations can help those who are dealing with this disease. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you for having me.
So glad that you're here. So to get the ball rolling, I understand that you have a really good analogy to illustrate this disorder using bottle caps. So tell us about that.
Exactly. So most of us, we buy a glass bottle, of soda, and we remove the bottle cap. The bottle cap looks like this. We've all seen them many times. We put it in the trash, we drink our beverage. The people with this disorder have a little bit of a different brain chemistry and different thought process regarding this bottle cap. They tend to be much more highly creative, and therefore the bottle cap can turn into what I can show you here, many different things. If I asked you what else could you do with this bottle cap, you'd come up with 5 or 6 things. They could come up with hundreds. And one of the things I'm demonstrating here is that you can come up with the idea of saving them and using them for your beads because you're a crafter and you're going to do a necklace or a bracelet. So that's just a utilitarian use that I've seen someone with hoarding disorder do. But then you can also melt some wax from an old candle and put a stick in it, and now it's a mini candle for you in case the lights go out. Sure. And then the final example I wanted to show you, and this is, again, they could do hundreds, but this is 3 that I've seen. You can take a picture of a baby, maybe your grandchild, put it in the bottle cap, add this to make it a little flower, and then a magnet on the back and put it on your fridge. Now then this becomes very emotional. So a bottle cap that we would just throw in the trash can become an emotional, important touchstone for someone with hoarding disorder due to a high level of creativity.
Right. Wow. It's hard to believe that a simple item like a bottle cap has so much emotionality associated with it.
Right.
Wow. Well, tell me a little bit more about this disorder, including anything that research that shows causes or triggers, because I've heard there's sometimes a divorce or a death or something. So tell us a little bit about that, because it is a mental
health disorder. Yes, you're absolutely right. Before May of 2013, it wasn't. Before May of 2013, we had the mental health community, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker. So the mental health community had thought that it was a subset of obsessive compulsive disorder. And actually, further research has shown that that is not really the case. Brain scans and MRIs done with dyes have shown where exactly in the brain things are different for those with hoarding disorder. It's called the anterior angulate cortex. So it's right behind your prefrontal cortex. Interestingly, this is the same, and there's also another part of the brain called the insula, which has to do with emotion, and that first part has to do with decision making. Very interestingly, very new, it also is the place where we perceive beauty. So it's the same part of the brain where we perceive what is beautiful and what isn't. So the folks with this disorder, research is showing, have high activity in these two parts of the brain, an emotional place and a decision-making place, along with the beauty, the observation of beauty, making it incredibly difficult for them to part with things. And so you asked me a little bit about, what could the triggers be? Often what happens is you have had this type of brain. We all have different brains. We all have different talents. And you've had this for a long time, and it's been a low-lying thing that's happened. And then there's that trigger you were just talking about. There was the divorce. There was a death of a mother, and all of her things came, and all those things have emotion. And maybe the divorce or spouse dying, the spouse had kept the hoarding kind of okay, and then it becomes there's no boundaries. People don't have any boundaries. They're living alone, and they can do what they want. The disorder often has a secondary component. People have hoarding disorder, which is now classified in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. So that means therapists can be paid to treat it. But they could also have, and many do, depression, major depression, 53% have that. ADHD or ADD is 28% have that, generalized anxiety, 24%, and then that obsessive compulsive that we originally thought it was is only 18% on top of that. So it's a very complex, each person is going to carry some of these or not, and then those triggers you're talking about, it didn't change the brain. The brain was probably already what it was, but it changes how the disease is expressed.
There is so much to this, so many layers, that my question now is, how can family members and caregivers address this type of behavior that they find in their loved ones?
That is the tough one, yes. And I feel for anybody who has, I've had it too in my family, someone with this disorder, so I understand it on a professional and personal level. The truth is, as a caregiver, you probably already have gotten into multiple arguments with this person. There's been a lot of tension and push-pull. I think one of the first things is you can't be their therapist, and you can't force them to get rid of things. So you may want to move those responsibilities to professionals. You heard from our code enforcement folks, but there's plenty of declutterers. There's a National Association of Organizers who also do decluttering. We keep a list. County can't recommend one over another, but we can give the list. And these folks are amazing with how to work with someone with hoarding disorder who has agreed to get rid of some of their things.
What is the first step for someone to help their loved one as far as resources are concerned? I mean, is there a starting point, and then all the resources then become available as they continue research?
The power lies with the person with the hoarding disorder. They are not incapacitated. They are adults who have a right to live the way they want. Until they break code rules, then they can be placarded, then there's some leverage. So the truth is, the approach is very, very important with your family member, and they're not just their things. They're not just about that. They are people with unique talents and unique value systems and unique ways of being, and so talk to them about other things. Don't go in the house. Pick them up. Have lunch. Don't even discuss the stuff one day. Keep the relationship going. And then the goal is to show respect. Don't threaten, don't push, you don't have power, anyway. People can live the way they want, but keep the relationship intact and then have boundaries. You may not want your kids to go to grandmom's, but grandmom can come to yours, your home, and keep that relationship. If it rises to the level where it's against code, then we've got a little bit of a problem. But we also have some leverage, and that's where you would call in these professionals, not necessarily the caregiver. It would have to be a conversation with the older adult. It's not cheap. The older adult often has money, though. Unfortunately, the county doesn't have funds, a big pot of money to help with this. But to get back in compliance, those who do decluttering are amazing to me. When I watch how they work with someone arguing about whether or not to get rid of a twist tie, but not an argument, no, respectful, or a bottle cap, that they know how to do it. They're amazing, and we are lucky in Northern Virginia to have many people. They're not just junk be gone. They're true professionals who know how to work with this type of brain chemistry.
So my question to you is, you're obviously passionate about what it is that you do. What led you to the work that you do right now?
I think earlier in the segment, code enforcement folks Rachael was talking about adult protective services. That's what I do.
Okay.
And I really, I've always liked that. So when I first got my degree a long time ago in St. Louis, one of my first cases, I had never known what it was, and I walked into the home, and now I've been in the home, I'd say, fewer than code, but in multiple counties, multiple states, hundreds of homes with hoarding and storage. And I've never met two people that are exactly the same. And I found it fascinating just to talk to them. And really, I think the best thing that I did, and I hope that caregivers could also do to work with people with this disorder, is to show nothing on my face that would shame them.
Yes.
Nothing that said, and so they didn't see that from me. And there's people with hoarding disorder are like anybody else. They can pick that up on your face and shut down. So I had some very interesting conversations with folks, and I had to be tough because it is adult protective services. We cannot force people to live different lives. We will, however, if they have Alzheimer's disease, dementia, lack capacity, they're all alone and have no families, things might go to court. We might have more of an aggressive movement. That is very, very rare. We want to keep people where they're living. And we're not looking for house beautiful. We're not looking for it to be completely spick and span.
Functional.
Just functional, get back to code, get the placard off your door, and stay where you are.
Karen, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And thank you for watching this edition of Mature Living. I'm Fran Guasta-Desangi, and we'll see you next time.